Well, good evening and hello. Welcome, everyone. It's Imani and Bernard, and welcome back. We're live again. I know we've had a couple of, well, the last show was a repeat of our guest that we have back this evening, Mr. Vandorn Hinnant, a phenomenal artist and good friend of ours. So we're delighted to have him back. We were just warming up for the first show and realized that if we're going to do a part two, we need to do it back to back. But before we get to Vandorn, I'm going to turn it over to my co-host and husband.
Thank you. And welcome again, everyone. We are looking forward to our guest sharing with us once again this fabulous work. And he will share in the welcoming of the ancestors. This evening, I just want to begin by asking you to take in 3 cleansing breaths to settle in. If you're able to just sit quietly, I will strike the tingshaws very gently. And then one reading that I want to share from Thich Nhat Hanh, his book, The Art of Communicating. So if you like to participate, close your eyes, relax your shoulders by letting them drop a millimeter. 3 breaths in and out, and feel the muscles in your body relaxing, the tension leaving. Don't exaggerate, he writes. The second part of right speech is to refrain from inventing and exaggerating. You want to speak about some little thing, but you exaggerate and make it very big. For example, someone has made a mistake, but you exaggerate as though it's something many times worse. Sometimes when you're speaking to ourselves, when we are speaking to ourselves, we make something seem very tragic to justify and even feed our anger. There may be some truth in what you say and want to say, but you exaggerate what the other person has done, so you paint a wrong image of the other. This may seem harmless, but it takes you away from the truth and takes away the trust in a relationship. Refrain from exaggerating. Ashe.
Ashe. Good advice, very simple. But, you know, people exaggerate all the time. And to what end? So I think that's very good advice. We're going to bring on Mr. Vandorn Hinnant, and he's going to continue our opening, and then I'm going to introduce him. So let's see, there you are.
All right. Okay, well, I simply wanted to ask everyone that's joining us tonight to consider looking back at those who have gone before us, who have joined the ancestors, and send up a gigantic thanks to them for all that they did to prepare the way for us and to prepare us for our journey that we are on momentarily. So it was a very simple thank you to the ancestors, those who have joined the ancestors, gone over to the ancestral realm. Yes.
All right. Thank you so much.
All right. Yes.
So important.
Thank you.
And I mean, we talk about and give homage to the ancestors all the time, but we certainly encourage our listeners, viewers to do the same thing. You know, we stand on their shoulders in terms of all that they had to do and sacrifice for us, you know, coming behind them. So truly, truly, truly grateful.
Thank you.
All right. So with that, I'm going to just go ahead. Well, a couple comments I want to make before I officially introduce you, Vandorn. So please indulge me for a second. We want to encourage people to subscribe to our YouTube channel, Progressively Yours Health and Wellness Podcast, because that's where we really get the numbers. The numbers are growing, and we're excited about that. We want them to continue to grow. And we want people to also receive our weekly newsletter, which you can receive by sending us an email. Sankofa, well, let me spell it out. I don't know if we have it on there. SANKOFAINST, the number 4, wellness@gmail.com. Just let us know that you'd like to get on our mailing list. We have a newsletter link up there, and I'm not sure that that's totally up to date. So Sankofa Inst for wellness@gmail.com will get you to us so that we can get you on the official email list. We also want to thank our producer. We always, I mean, Toya, Glenn, and Janet are just so amazing. They're there for us every week. So we'd like to thank you. If you need producers, you want to look up Go Giga Productions. That's GOGIGA Productions. And they're just an amazing team with amazing service. So we wanted to give a shout out to our production crew. Without them, this would not go as smoothly as it does every single week. So we're grateful to you, Toya. Toya's in the background this evening. And so with that, now I do want to officially reintroduce Vandorn to our listeners and viewers. Thank you all for listening and viewing and being with us this evening. Vandorn Hinnant was born in Greensboro, North Carolina in 1953. He received a Bachelor of Arts degree in art design from North Carolina A&T State University in Greensboro, North Carolina, and studied sculpture as well. He's a recipient of numerous awards. I'm going to do the short version, Vandorn, because I want you to have the time. Vandorn continues to develop within the mainstream parameters of what is viewed as modernist abstraction. Drawing is at the heart of his practice, and for the last 2 decades or so, his work has become more reliant on the principles of what some name sacred geometry. And that's what I always relate to Vandorn, because he has such beautiful sacred geometry work, but other work as well. And so with that, we're going to let you have the time. We know that you have artwork to share and to talk about and to enlighten our audience this evening. The floor is yours. Welcome and thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. So what I'd like to do is start off by reviewing something that was spoken on 2 weeks ago, and that's the golden proportion, the golden ratio, because practically all of my work embodies the golden ratio. So I'd like to start off by showing some images, yes. And this is an image that is titled Time's Golden Arrow. This is a page from my second book, well, I should say my second volume of Love Opera House of the Soul. So a number of these images that you will see are actually from the book titled Love Opera House of the Soul. So this, what you see here is actually 4 golden rectangles. And so if you can see where my cursor is, if I trace this line around here and go from here to there to there, to there, to there. That's one golden rectangle. Then there's another one here, beginning here. And it's the very same golden rectangle. And so you'll have to go look it up. The golden rectangle is an invention by humans that shows this spiraling pathway. This is how energy flows into matter. And that's one of the ways that I talk about the golden ratio and about energy flow and what patterns are. We have all of these amazing patterns that we see in nature, but we don't know how they became those beautiful patterns. And the way that they become those beautiful patterns has to do with the way energy is formatted in matter. So, and that's not exactly techno-babble, but some might say, okay, he's talking over my head. Let's see, where is the next slide? Okay, maybe we go to the next one, please. Oh, here, I have the arrowhead, right? I can actually do it myself now. Okay, so this is another composition with the very same the very same curve. You begin here, you go here. That's a quarter of a circle. If you look at this arcing line here, it's 1/4 of a circle inside of a square. So what happens is when you go to the next square, it's smaller, but you have the very same pattern, 1/4 of a circle. You go to the next square here, you have the very same pattern there, the circle, 1/4 of a circle. You go to the next square, which is here, you have the very same pattern, 1/4 of a circle. You go to the next square, very same pattern, 1/4 of a circle in the next one, and the next one ad infinitum. Well, this is a pattern that has been created by a human being, but it exists in nature. The conch shell, the inner ear, the embryo in the human life form. We have the golden rectangle, or the golden spiral, I should say, in the arms of the Milky Way, and more places that I can actually remember momentarily. But I just wanted to recap that so that some people could say, well, he was talking about the golden ratio, the golden proportion. Those two words mean the same thing. And so these are simply two works of art that I created speaking about that. Now, what I'm getting ready to show you are some inventions of mine. What you see is a three-dimensional cross inside of what I'll call a geometric cage. I call it a semi-spherical form. Now, these compositions were originally created as adornments, body adornments, so that they could be used as earrings and as pendants. And I learned after I designed them and after people acquired some of them, they're actually a lot more than what I thought that they were originally. So I'm going to show a few images. This is one titled, gosh, what is the name of this thing? 7 Gates to Freedom. So what happens is, if you look here, that's a portal. That actually goes from one side all the way over to the other side. This portal right here goes from this side all the way over to the other side, and then you have a vertical axis. So you actually have 3 axes in space. Some people know the Cartesian coordinates, X, Y, and Z axes. Well, this composition has the X, Y, and Z axis in it in terms of those portals through. Now, when you get to the center of this composition, it's open. So each one of these is actually an open window to the center. So it's, once again, it's a 3-dimensional cross. Some of you have seen 3-dimensional crosses on churches and other types of buildings that have to do with what I'll call our religions of the world. And you see pentagons. There's a pentagon on the face, there's squares on the face, and there are triangles. Well, this outer shell has a name in geometry land. I don't need to name it, but I just want to say that that's a top-down view of the same form. And these are gold-plated. They're made out of brass, and they're gold-plated. And they're only 1 inch in diameter, but they're gorgeous. Now, the ones that are earrings are actually 1/2 inch in diameter. And this is a different one. It has the same outer shell, but it just has, the portals are different. This one has a different, this has pentagonal portals, and the one that you saw before that has rectangular or square portals. And this is another one, which is a solid form on the interior with the same open cage on the outside. So it's the same geometry on the outside and then different geometries on the inside. And then that's, once again, that's the one titled 7 Gates to Freedom. So you can see right through it from the front to the back. And that's another view of it. So those, just to give you an oversight, this is an abstraction. I started doing abstractions when I was a kid. If you go back and review the previous talk, that was held 2 weeks ago, I talk about the difference between the geometric abstractions and the organic abstractions. So when I was a kid, I was actually having these inner visions, and this would be considered something related to the types of inner visions that I was having when I was a teenager. And so there is a group of people on the planet that talk about some invisible beings. They call them inorganic beings. So my idea is that I might be painting inorganic beings, because what you see here, that actually represents the head. This represents the vertical column of the body. And it doesn't, I'm not trying to match, have a one-to-one correlation between a human body and this, but these do represent sentient beings. That means beings that have thoughts and feelings and interact with one another. This is a geometric abstraction, or sacred geometry composition, I should say. And it's titled Journey to Oneness. But Lisa, yeah, that's the title of it. Anyway, it's actually 13 circles. So everybody has an idea about number and the meanings of numbers. Every number has a meaning, but not all cultures say the same thing about those meanings. And for me, the number 13 is part of something called a Fibonacci sequence. So you start with 1 plus 1, and you get 2, and then you add 1 plus 2 and you get 3, 2 plus 3 you get 5, 3 plus 5 you get 8, 5 plus 8 you get 13, and then the next one is 21, and then the next one is 34, and you keep going. So what I want to say about this composition is that you see these rays on the outside. I've been doing that for decades. Those rays actually represent the illuminated consciousness. So like in Christian iconography, you see these halos around holy people. And this depiction of these rays represents the notion of consciousness emanating from a living being. And in this particular case, it's a geometric form that can be thought of as an angelic being. We have one person might be listening tonight, a Reverend Norma Edwards, who lives in South Carolina. She and her husband are there now. And when she saw one of my compositions titled As Above, So Below, she told me that it looked just like an angel that she had seen. So, you know, I'm not in a position to argue with anyone. Many people see different things in these compositions. In fact, this one is actually titled New Angel. And so this actually represents an angelic being. You have those 3 white lines that represent the wings. That's the head, and with those illuminations coming from it. And then you have the torso and the lower body. And then this orb down here actually represents the earth. And once again, these are symbolic and metaphoric compositions. And all of these wavy lines actually represent the energy that's emanating from this being that's going out into space. And so my organic abstractions generally represent a sentient being broadcasting a message. In this particular case, it's an angelic being broadcasting a message. I titled this one, I've actually done 2 compositions. The blue represents the masculine energy. The red represents the feminine. Now that's what I thought in the beginning, but I've been told since then, since I created this a long time ago, that the original colors for the yin-yang symbol are blue and red, not black and white. And the red actually represents the masculine energy, and the blue actually represents the feminine energy. This is what one of my friends, who is an acupuncturist, who says this. So there's a body of writings that are called the right use of will. So when I created this, I color coded it blue, red, yellow, and green. And the yellow represents the daughter of what we will call the divine feminine. The green represents the son of the divine masculine and the divine feminine. So you have a marriage. You have a marriage of the divine, we're going to say the divine masculine. I'm going to stick with my original thought when I first created it. And you have the divine feminine. And then the progeny would be this heart shape here and this heart shape there. So what you have are 4 heart shapes. And this is all created on the same geometry of the one that I showed you a few moments ago, titled Journey to Oneness. This is a freehand drawing, and I titled it Breathe. But what you see are actually references to the heart. So here's one reference to the heart here. So in 4 directions, you see a reference to the heart. At least I think it's, well, you see it on the vertical axis, a reference to the heart here. and a reference to the heart there. But the heart is actually suggested here. We're going to, in fact, the Sankofa symbol is here. If you can trace this little spiral that runs here and goes out here and then goes back and curves back around here, and then you go over here and you curve around, you curve back around. That's actually the Sankofa symbol. So I don't use the Sankofa symbol all of the time. The hosts of the show have the Sankofa bird. And it's interesting, my wife and I just finished a book that had the main character, her name was Sankofa. And that some of you know the name Inedi Okorafor, who is quite the fascinating new kid on the block when it comes to writing novels, fiction, science fiction, and what have you. This is a mandala, just as one of the earlier compositions that I showed you. The word mandala means circle, but what you have here are a number of sets of concentric circles. So it may not be easy to see this small image, but you have blue here, and you have blue there, you have blue there, and then you have blue there. So there's actually, okay, let's say purple here, purple here, purple here, purple there, and purple there. So you have these spiraling patterns. And so what's being suggested here is a spiraling to the center. Here's red, 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 then red there, and then red there. So there's motion in here that's being suggested by the way the colors are placed on the surface. But some of you have heard the word flower of life and what's the other term? Seed of life. So what you see here is a reference to the flower of life, but you don't see it, but it is being suggested. But the seed of life is easily seen because it's the first circle, which is, I think it's, yeah, this is the first circle that's on the page. Then the second circle is here, third circle is there. Then there's 6 circles that circle around the first circle. And all of those 7 circles together are something that's called the seed of life. So, you know, if there are questions that come up in the, do we have a way for people to ask questions while I'm talking? Or do we have to wait until the end?
We have some comments, and the comments have all been very positive about how amazing your work is, but I don't see any questions yet per se. So if people have questions, you can put them into the comment section and we'll be happy to share them with you.
This composition, yes, thank you. This composition is titled Shaman's Dream. And this area down here actually represents the earth. This shape here actually represents a house. And here's reference to a door, reference to a window. And then you see these things that look like wisp of smoke. I think I thought there were 2 of them. Here's one that winds its way up, the picture playing here. But I think there might be another one. I can't see it. The image is too small for me to actually see if there's a second wisp of smoke. And then there are these orbs. There's one here, and there's another one someplace else over here. There are 2 or 3 orbs. Those orbs represent individuals who are traveling in their dreams. So some of us actually fly in our dreams, but everybody is having a dream experience, even if they don't bring memory back. And this, when it's titled Shaman's Dream, shaman is another name for medicine man or medicine woman. So the idea is that as the shaman is laying inside the hut sleeping at nighttime, their spirit or their soul is traveling. And that's what is being suggested in this composition. So all of this represents the sky out here. And this, once again, this represents a house or a hut. And here's another representation of a hut here with the sun in the sky, or representation of the sun. This actually represents a human being or a sentient being, at least. Here's the doorway, a window, and a chimney with smoke coming out of it. So actually a small sketch that was created a long time ago. But once again, most of these images are in my book. Here's another representation of an organic abstraction, or what I would call an inorganic being. And I used to have these visions when I was a kid. I would see these, I would have these visions and I would actually try to record them. So I started painting when I was 13 or 14, attempting to capture these images that I was seeing in my mind's eye or my spiritual eye. So this actually represents the soul right here. And this green orb actually represents the earth. So here's a shamanic being standing on the earth with energy emanating from the core of the earth, spiraling out and further out into what we'll call space, but connecting with the soul of this being that's standing on the earth. So humans actually have these experiences all of the time, but most of us are distracted with day-to-day thoughts about survival and other things that either pleasant or unpleasant. But in reality, all of us are connected to the core of the earth, and this composition simply represents our connection to the core of the earth. And these lines out here represent energy that's emanating from this being right here. And when I say it represents a sentient being, that means a being that thinks and feels. And this is the book, the composition that's on the cover of the book titled Love Opera House of the Soul. And it's titled Before We Knew, from the Mother of Everything. That's a whole lot to say, but what I want to talk about is that the circle here actually represents the universe. And so with this representation of the universe, everything inside of this circle is something that we would say exists inside of the universe. And so you have this statement of duality. You have the masculine and the feminine, blue and red, polar opposites representing the polar opposites in life. You always have positive and negative, but you have not just positive and negative, but you have masculine and feminine. So in this case, we have a representation of the masculine and feminine that's inside what we will call the universe. And so everything in the universe has a masculine and feminine element or aspect. It's impossible for that not to be the case, because that's how nature works. And we do have, science has suggested to us that there are some neutral zones, but I'm not going to try to refute the notion that the masculine and the feminine are the be all and end all of nature and all that exists in nature. So that sounds like a philosophical statement. And I'm as my father would say, that's my story and I'm sticking to it. So thank you for those who take issue with that. I understand. Here's another organic abstraction. This one actually pays homage to the Star Trek character named Uhuru. And it's titled Uhuru's Dream. And I actually created the sketch for this, the original sketch for this in pencil, when I was at a Star Trek movie a long time ago. I think it was 2011. So I think I created this composition right after 2011. And here's the head of the individual, the body here, standing on Earth. All of these rings down here represent the Earth, but this red line also represents the Earth plane. So here's the soul of the Earth here, and here's Uhuru standing on it, broadcasting this message that's spiraling out into space. And then this blue line could be thought of as her auric field, or her soul essence emanating from her, and in a manner of speaking, protecting her. And here is another composition, another organic abstraction, which is paying homage to Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And it has a long title, and I can't read the title. It says, "The Spirit of Martin, Receiving the Revelation of Nonviolence as the Natural," and forgive me for not remembering the title of it, but the natural, something to do with the natural state of the human. But once again, it's a long time. This was created in 2009, I believe, and I don't remember all of my titles. But here you have this representation of Martin here, with all of this energy above his head, which represents the dynamics of all of his spiritual thinking and what have you. And so you have this circle up here that represents heaven, this circle down here that represents the earth, and then you have all of these waves here that represent the energy emanating from the earth, and all of these little circles here represent the energy of the earth, the soul of the earth. And so this is simply a representation of Dr. Martin Luther King standing on the earth, broadcasting a message. And here's another piece that's related to one of the second, maybe the third piece that I showed you earlier, and it's titled Eye of Illumination. And once again, all of these rays represent consciousness. My story is that these compositions actually represent angelic beings, I'll say that, or sentient beings. And once again, this is based on the number 13. So there are actually 13 major circles here, one set of 12 circles or one set of 13 circles. This is titled Window to the Golden Temple #2. I did a number of these, and these images are rather small on the screen, so I don't know how easy they are for you to read, but if you get the book, you'll be able to see them much better. And I can't say much about this composition. Once again, the rays that represent consciousness emanating from a central circle, and that circle actually represents an individual in this case. So the circle can represent an individual, it can represent a sentient being, it can represent an angelic being, or it could represent the universe, it could represent the world. All of those can be represented by a circle. And of course, we could say that one's sacred space can be represented by a circle also. When we talk about my personal space or one's auric field, we're talking about the energy field around an individual. And this is some writing from the book. I'm not going to read that to you. I'm simply going to say that this is what I do. This is called a word form. And so what I will do is I'll write a poem, but I'll turn it into a shape. So this sort of resembles an oval shape, or two circles that share a radius that would be considered a vesica Pisces. So these words are actually formatted to fit inside of what's called a vesica Pisces, and that's something that is understood in sacred geometry. Okay, so this composition is titled Word, and it's very difficult to see it, but around this large circle are rays that are emanating from it. In 1997, I did a triptych, and the triptych was titled Voice, Word, and Language, and this is the third of the three, which is generally shown in the center. And then a voice, the composition voice is shown on the left-hand side, and language is shown on the right-hand side. So I believe I have all three of those compositions to show you. This is fourfold symmetry. And I have a blue axis on the vertical running down the center, and I have a red axis on the horizontal. What I have done is I've color-coded my compositions, always referencing the masculine and the feminine energies. So here we have a red axis on the horizontal axis and a blue axis on the vertical axis, and where they meet in the center, that would be considered the heart. So this piece is titled Language. And you have a lot of circles in here, but once again, you have this illumination on the outside, then there's more illumination on this circle and more illumination on this circle. Now, one of the stories that I like to tell is about how these compositions affect people, because these actually, let me go back. These compositions are called mandalas, but they can also be thought of as yantras. Yantra is an East Indian term that is a word that has to do with a physical representation of a sacred sound. So what some of these compositions do is actually show you the energetic signatures of sounds that are emanating from our vocal apparatus or from instruments. If you had an instrument that could show you what the patterns are that emanate from our voice or from musical instruments, you would actually see patterns similar to this. You would see circles within circles within circles, or spheres within spheres within spheres, and you would see rays and all kinds of amazing things, right? Reminds me of the mother of everything, reminds me of the isness downstepping her vibration into the multi-dimensional frequencies of manifestation. Oh, yes. All right. Well, yes, indeed. That's it, right? Yeah. The mother of everything, that's one of my favorite lines. And those of us who have any association with the right use of will know that term very well. This is a composition that is the other variation on the theme Sankofa. So what you have is this heart shape here, and the other half of it is there. Then you have another one on the outside of it. So I oftentimes use double Sankofa patterns, and this right here is a doorway. And I use doorways in my work a lot because I'm generally talking about the doorway between, or the portal between this dimension and the next dimension. So Bernard was talking earlier before we got on the program to Toya, one of our techies, and he was talking to her about how his day went. And I didn't get a chance to catch everything that he said, but it sounded like he was counseling someone who had perhaps lost a dear one. We'll see if we can circle back around to that. There are words in here. I believe this one says, there is an intelligence dwelling in the heart. Some of us call it love. I think that's the way that one reads. Yeah, wow, okay. It is the human heart that shapes the destiny of the soul. I've been writing all of my life, and so this book is actually a compilation of writings and images, and it was supposed to be published 35 years ago. I finally got around to publishing it last year, and these are called twin flame patterns. They're identical patterns, but I don't have an image to show you. But this, if you turn this, rotate this composition 90 degrees, and you color in all of these squares, you will actually see this beautiful spiraling pattern. And I think I'll put one of those in the second book, the second volume. So the second volume hasn't been published yet. What does this say? Your heart, my heart. This is only talk about oneness. Yes. And here's a poem that I can't read, but let's see. Let me go to the next slide. Okay, hold on a second. Let me see if I can find it. That poem there. Okay. I don't have them together. Oh boy. All right, that's all right. The poem that I flashed on the screen a moment ago, this poem is actually from, it's a piece of writing that I did, and it's a 6-stanza poem. It is actually the writing that's on a sculpture that I'll show you later when we get towards the end of these slides. Here's another organic being, I call it star being. And once again, the head, the body. I've been doing these types of drawings, once again, ever since I was a young teenager, 13, 14. And I did a whole series of these in the 70s, did a lot of these in the late 1970s, yeah. All of these lines represent rays of consciousness or thought forms that are emanating and moving through a being, out of a being, around a being. Here's like a halo around the head here. Antenna, we could think of all of these as being antenna or even thoughts that are being projected out from one. LOVE. And I say love equals the light of voluntary evolution. So lots of people have these words that they use to mean something more than just the 4 letters or the 5 letters or the 6 letters of the word. So this is, once again, my variation on the theme, love. What is love? Love is the light of voluntary evolution. And here's another word form poem in the shape of a diamond. And now in living, it is all desire. The fire of love is the flame in mind, body, and heart, dancing itself awake in us, illuminating our paths, lifting our hearts, singing itself alive now. And I don't know if you all know this, but Dr. Imani also writes poetry and has been writing poetry for a very, very long time. Some of you who have not been on her program before might not know anything about her history, but she has a long history of writing poetry. This particular composition, I titled it Light Prism, right. And it's a 12-fold symmetry composition. You can see the north axis, the south axis, the west axis, and the east axis. But you can rotate it, and every time you rotate it, you have the very same pattern. If you rotate it one time, this would be the north, that would be the south, this would be the east, and that would be the west. So there are 12 spokes, and now you have squares. You have 3 squares, and you have 4 triangles. So here's one square here, the second square, and the third square is there, right? And then you have 4 triangles. One triangle here. Now the triangles are not delineated, but the squares are. So I won't talk about the triangles. Anyway, Light Prism was really not meant to be a work of art. It was really just a study, but I decided to release it as what might be called a work of art. Here's the other Sankofa symbol here, the double or triple. There's a triple Sankofa here. So you have in this orange color, one Sankofa symbol, then there's a blue here, the second one, and then there's a third one, sort of like a halo. And some of us know that everybody has an energetic signature that is thought of as being an auric field or one's energy body. So that's what this particular halo-like form represents. The sort of like the, I'll call it the dream body even, that is around the physical body. So these three layers could be thought of as body, mind, and then soul. And here's the doorway again, the portal, this spiral here, inside of this circle. That circle actually represents the sun. So all of these rays actually represent the sun. And then there's writing here. This composition was finally formalized in 2015. It had been hanging around in my life for like 15 years or more as a pencil study. And it says, "It is only when love sleeps that war can walk amongst us. And tell me, who is it that shall awaken love? Tell me it is you." I can't read that, so I'm not necessarily speaking it verbatim. But here it is at the bottom. "It is only when love sleeps that war can walk among us. And tell me, who among us shall awaken love? Who shall awaken love? Tell me it is you." And once another quote at the top. This book is full of beautiful quotable quotes. We could say that it's actually a Valentine's book. Okay, do you use tools to mathematically calculate the sacred geometry to create the Fibonacci spiral and flower of life? Yes, I do. And I use the same techniques that anybody else uses in terms of, some of us who have studied sacred geometry know that you have to make very specific marks on the page to get the golden rectangle and the golden spiral. So the answer is yes. I use a compass and a straight edge. And I learned from my mentor how to create the golden spiral decades ago. And it's a very simple formula that anybody can find in cyberspace. Here's, believe it or not, what you're looking at is actually a print made by vegetation, stamps from vegetation. So these little blue stars are actually cross sections of star fruit. And these little red things towards the center are actually one half of a hickory nut used as a stamp. So, some of you know what potato stamp printmaking is. This is printmaking using vegetation. These little green things right here are halves of walnuts. And this little cluster out here is actually the base of a celery stalk, or the base of a, let's call it a head of celery. And then I have every little arc like this is actually a part of a celery stalk that was dipped into the paint and then pressed onto the paper. But I actually do generally start with a drawing underneath, a very, very faint pencil drawing, so that this one represents tenfold symmetry. So I actually had 10 circles. And all of the circles on here are actually created with acorn caps. What and where did you study art? Okay. I actually studied art at A&T State University in Greensboro. And then I went to UNCG and studied sculpture. So that's my study of art, my background. I stopped studying art in school in the 8th grade because one of my professors stole one of my works of art. And I said, oh no, this will never happen to me again. So I didn't take any more art courses because I said, okay, if this is how these guys are rolling, they're going to take your artwork and not give it back to you. And this happens to a lot of people. I'm one of just a few. Anyway, now this is a very special sacred geometry composition. This composition is actually 7 flower of life patterns in one. So if you look at this circle right here, that's the outer perimeter of one of the flower of life patterns. Here's the outer perimeter of another one here. Here's the outer perimeter of another one here. There's the outer perimeter of another one there. There's the outer perimeter of another one. They're not that easy to see. There's another one there. So anyway, those of you who know the flower of life, this is actually 7 flower of life patterns in one. And then I have rays emanating from the center. And all of those rays are actually related to the thesis that my mentor wrote. It's called The Rest of Euclid. You can find it in cyberspace. The Rest of Euclid. It has a subtitle, a long subtitle. I won't talk about the subtitle, but it has to do with geometry, mathematics, arithmetic, and counting what are called the irrational numbers, which are not irrational any longer because we have proven that all of these square roots can be computed. So the square root of 4 can be computed because most people know that because the square root of 4 is related to the linear number 2. But the square root of 5 can be computed. The square root of 3 can be computed. So if you get the book titled The Rest of Euclid, you will begin to see how computing in the plane is done. So every one of these lines is actually a length that can be named in terms of a square root or a square root plus a fraction of another square root. This is a very simple composition based on sixfold symmetry. So these circles right here are actually gold in the original and a gold pigment. And there are 7 of them. So here's the first one here. And then here are the 6 that you walk around the circumference of the first circle, put your compass point here, draw your second circle, draw your third circle centered here. That's the third circle, the fourth circle centered here, 5th, 6th, and 7th. Here's the word love, L-O-V-E, and here's the word sacred, S-A-C-R-E-D. So I titled this composition Sacred Love, and that's actually titled after a song by Sting, who my wife happens to be a Sting devotee. So when I met her, I became introduced to Sting's music. He's quite the poet, quite the amazing poet. And at the top here, we have another quote. Yes, love prevails as the heart unveils one sacred love. And here's another word form, and I will try to make it in the shape of a cup. So here, this will be the base of the cup, and this will be the cup. I won't read it, but okay. We are the universe dying. We are the universe crying. We are the universe learning. We are the universe laughing. We are the universe birthing. We are the universe singing. We are the universe being. I rejoice with you now and forevermore. Love lights the way. Ashe. This is actually a computer. You see this triangle right here in blue. There's another triangle here in blue, a third triangle here in blue, a fourth one, a fifth one. There are actually 7 of them. Difficult to see all of them here. Each one of these triangles has this very same shape. Each one of these triangles is a fraction of the smaller one. So you take this triangle here, and its edges in sacred geometry language is the square root of 1, the square root of 4, and the square root of 3. So if you take the square root of 3, the square root of 4, and the square root of 1, and you have a right triangle, you will have a right triangle. This is a right triangle. This is the very same right triangle in red. This is the very same right triangle in yellow. So you have a spiraling pathway to the center in yellow. You have a spiraling pathway to the center in red. You have a spiraling pathway to the center in blue. Red, yellow, and blue are the primary colors. There's another composition that has a red, yellow, blue, and then the secondary colors in it. But let's see, what is the title of this piece? Root 3 fractal spirogram. I made the word spirogram up, but it is descriptive. I take poetic license at all times, and I make words up, and people are doing this 24/7. Let's see now. That's another quote at the top, but I won't read that. Okay. Here is an interesting composition that was actually purchased by Kinkelaba House in New York City. I was in a group exhibition there in 2005, and this work of art was in the show, and they bought it for their collection. It's titled Fractal River Paradigm. So this actually is a fractal composition. It's too much to point out to you how it is a fractal composition, but that's interesting. Let's go back to this. This composition can be thought of as a fractal diagram. This pattern in relation to this pattern, in relation to this pattern, you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Each one of the shapes are identical, and they are proportionally smaller to the next one. And the ratio, I can't talk about the ratio because I haven't even figured out what the ratio of the reduction is. This is a fractal pattern also, but of a different nature. Each one of these circles have a proportional relationship to one another, but I can't spell it out. And here at the top, love is a river flowing, I am water. That is my way of responding to an old Sufi saying, which goes like this: love is a fire, I am wood. So years after hearing that beautiful Sufi quote, and for those that don't know what Sufism is the mystical side of Islam. And just like Rosicrucianism is the mystical side of Christianity. And there's a mystical side of Judaism also. This composition represents the masculine and feminine. It's a variation on the theme yin yang. So this would represent either the masculine or feminine. Once again, my friend has asked me to not say that the blue represents the feminine. No, wait a minute. He's asked me not to say that the blue represents the masculine, that the blue represents the feminine, and that the red represents the masculine. So we'll go with that. This one is titled Anima Rising number 2, or Anima Rising number 2. And anima is a word that represents the divine feminine. So in the day and time that we are living in, we have a significant rise of the divine feminine, a rebirth of the divine feminine, whose head was removed by the patriarchy centuries ago towards the ends of a curious kind of manipulation of the masses. So the rebirth of the divine feminine is happening every day. More people are recognizing that there's something wrong with this one-sidedness in what we conveniently call religion. And of course, we've also seen a significant increase in women being, I guess you might say, taking the position of, pastors, reverends, what is the term in Judeo-Christianity? Not Christianity, but rabbi, yes. I know a woman who is actually a Jewish rabbi. Zippy Radonsky is her name. Anyway, you see the illumination around the outer circle. Once again, that's representing consciousness or sentience. And so once again, this is a variation on the theme yin yang, masculine, feminine, the perpetual dance. Here it is again, the masculine and the feminine interacting with one another. In this case, you have the color red and the color blue, and then you have purple. So purple is actually the synthesis of red and blue. So I enclose the 10-pointed red star and the 10-pointed blue star in circles to represent this marriage. So this composition could be thought of as a marriage of polar opposites, a marriage of two individuals, a marriage of two different types of ideology, or two different ideologies. And I suggested in our last talk 2 weeks ago that we could think of these as representing the two major political parties in North America. I like to think of those political parties as disintegrating as we speak, falling apart, dissolving into something that will be a unified whole. And I call it, let's have that color purple represent this unification of the blue party and the red party. And it is actually a spiritual color. The patriarchy learned a long time ago that when you use the color purple, you actually have people, human beings, more attuned to submission. Okay, now that's an inside story, but it is a true story from history. This composition is titled A Duet for Carmen and Dizzy. So Dizzy Gillespie represented on the left panel, Carmen McCrae represented on the right panel. You see red, that actually represents the earth, blue representing the sky. This represents the sun in the sky. These spirals actually represent the energy that emanates from the individual, from their core, and then they're connected. So you see the spiral running over here to this side, and it's this little orb right here represents the soul of Dizzy Gillespie. This little orb right here represents the soul of Carmen McCrae. So she's hitting this high note when she's singing. All of these rays represent that high note that she's hitting. This is an abstraction. This was printed at Brandywine Workshop in Philadelphia in 1994. This composition carries a lot of weight for a lot of people. You see the letter I, and then you see the two letters am. Well, I am actually means something in some spiritual communities. It's not a statement about the personality or the ego. It's a statement about one's higher self, or the I amness of the all that is. And some people understand what I mean by that, the I amness of the all that is. So the all that is another way of talking about what some people call God. And I use the term the all that is instead of using the term God, because I don't deify a masculine and feminine aspect of God. I think of God as being this holistic being that is neither masculine nor feminine, maybe both. So, hello.
Hey, Vandorn, sorry, I just wanted to let you know we've got about maybe 3.5 minutes left.
Okay.
And we're so enjoying this. So we
Okay.
do have to
this piece is titled a study for a monument to love. And so I can't read the poem for you because it's way at the back end, but every one of these panels has part of a poem on it. And so you have the 6 stanzas to this poem. You have 3 up here and then 3 down here. Anyway, it's made out of wood. It's 4 feet tall. It's just a model for a monumental sculpture. So the idea is that we want to see this become a monument in the world. This is the first slide, Love Opera House of the Soul. Can we entertain some questions? Or can we just talk?
We probably just have to wrap it up, unfortunately. Yeah, we've gotten a lot of good feedback from folks on the sideline. They're just in awe of your work and your contribution to the world. And so we're so delighted. There are very few people that we would like turn over the stage for our podcast, but we're so excited about what you've done and your all of your wonderful work.
So one of our Facebook viewers wrote, "Great discussion. Art is so spiritual."
Yes. Well, it certainly can be, and that's my intent. Yes, right. Yes.
And, another friend, Idea Gear, Mr. William Maxwell, new friend, also made a very positive comment, which I'm now losing. But yeah, we've had some amazing people watching the show in addition to you being so amazing.
Do you have any count? How many people joined us tonight?
Well, you know, we stream on 3 platforms: Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube.
Right.
So
probably there's no way to know.
Yeah, right. No. Very few people actually interact with us, but there are a lot of people who are watching. And somebody said, "Love that brother." Idea.
Let me thank everyone for joining us tonight. I feel your energy. I'm an energy sensitive, so I can actually feel a lot of beautiful, positive energy beaming. And so all of that positive energy that you're beaming is actually feeding people everywhere on the timeline, in the past and in the future. So the idea is to, if we could keep a positive note in our hearts, that positive note in our hearts feeds others. And that's our job, to let our light shine. So, you know, I'm doing it. You join in. If you haven't chosen to become a light warrior, become one today. You know.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And we'd like to thank you so much again, Vandorn, for sharing with us and our audience. And we'd love to have you back at some point. You all go out and buy his book, Love Opera House of the Soul. I can't wait to get a copy.
And you can go. Yes. You can go to my website. We have an Etsy site on my website, so you can see some of the images on there. Okay. Right.
Oh, good.
Okay.
Good.
Well, wonderful.
All right.
Well, thank you all. Thank you all. Yes.
You're welcome.
Loving blessings. Loving blessings. Thank you.
Love and blessings to you too, Vandorn. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night now. Okay.
All right. Take care now.
Thank you. Okay. Bye now.
Yeah.
Are we still on?
If we're still on,
to
the audience, we want to thank you for being with us tonight, and we appreciate the feedback. We appreciate your presence, and tell others about the show so that we can continue to grow. Also, you can send us information, ideas of what you would like for us to bring as it relates to health and wellness. And we would be happy to research, find persons in a particular area of interest.
Or if you have recommendations for people too, you can let us know that. So thank you again. We'll see you all soon.
Be
Blessings.
Well. All right.